Happy Transgender Day. Now, you might have noticed that I've disabled the comments for this video, and there's a very good reason for that. Gender is such a hot topic at the moment. I don't want anybody who might be feeling vulnerable to read through any of the comments if there are negative comments. This is a difficult enough time for many people, and today I just want to give a bit of education, and this isn't liberal education designed to convince people that, you know, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Well, I'm sorry, he created Steve too. You know, Steve just didn't appear. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So as you all know, I'm a nurse, and I like the idea that everything has a biological basis. And with all of this conversation about gender, I wanted to get in on the conversation, and it needs to be a conversation. It needs to be a conversation from the two polar opposites that we have in our community. We've got people who are saying God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And then we've got people at the other end of the spectrum going, you're biased, you're horrible, blah, blah, blah. We actually need to have a conversation where people are brought in together. I don't want to make anybody wrong. Nobody is wrong in any of this. What I want to do is actually change people's thinking into not that they're wrong, but that they're actually learning something new. You know, up until 1945, we were taught you can't split the atom. And then, what happened? We blew up Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Up until 1943, I think, people died from infections, and then they discovered penicillin. Up until the early 90s, people died from AIDS, and then they discovered retrovirals. So we're learning about science all the time. So why did I want to talk about gender? Gender is such a divisive topic at the moment. And the trouble with divisive topics is that there are human beings behind the divisiveness. So there are people who are really at one end, and there are people who are really at the other end, and there's actually not a huge amount in the middle. I remember the same thing happened with disability awareness. I don't remember this, but I know that exactly the same thing happened when women wanted the vote. I know exactly the same thing happened when HIV became prevalent. And so whenever there is something that threatens how we understand the world, all of a sudden we put up the shutters and go, that's not how it's been, so therefore that's not how it should be. The trouble is, we change. Every single generation has a change about it, and that's been happening since millennia. So I wanted to have a talk about gender, and I don't want to make anybody wrong. I want this to be a conversation, and I want this to be a learning experience, the same as we learn about new antibiotics, the same as we learn about something new like iridology. There is a science behind gender, and it's different to how we've actually been brought up to believe the science to be. So up until we discovered chromosomes, we'd look at a baby and we'd go, has a penis? It's a boy. Has a vagina? It's a girl. And all of a sudden, a girl baby would then be brought up one way, and a boy baby would be brought up another way. And occasionally you would see a baby with a penis and a vagina, and that baby was often didn't fare well. But what we're learning now is that, like with eye colour, all right, you can have brown eyes, you can have blue eyes, you can have green eyes, you can have grey eyes, but you can have a variety of blue. You can have a variety of brown. You can have a variety of green and a variety of grey. It doesn't mean that the person with bluer eyes has better sight. It doesn't mean that they have a better gene. It doesn't mean that they have anything better than the person who has pale blue eyes. And the same for all the eye colours. So what they've discovered since discovering genes is that there is actually a thing on the Y chromosome called the SRY gene on the X chromosome. And this SRY gene puts a whole heap of things into process to determine male or female. We have Wolffian ducts and Mullerian ducts, and one will develop male and one will develop female, and the SRY gene will determine the amount of hormones that will be expressed as the fetus develops. Now, someone who has pale blue eyes may not have the same amount of pigment. The same with the SRY gene. It may or may not trigger a lot of hormones or a little bit of hormones or anything in between. And so the person will develop anatomy of some description, whether it's male or female anatomy, but it may not trigger the hormones correctly, or it may trigger them in different concentrations. There are, and I say incorrectly in one aspect only because there are some syndromes where they can see that there's an absence of something that then creates anomalies. But in the majority of cases, there are hormones that are triggered that will either have one set of ducts progress and the other set of ducts shrivel, or vice versa. And it will do that in varying degrees, the same as your eye colour. So if it expresses genes and you grow a penis, it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of your body has been told that it has a penis. The rest of your body may have been told that you have a vagina, but you just happen to have a penis. And so one of the other things that they've discovered, sorry, just getting comfortable. One of the other things that they've discovered, and there's some really exciting research in Amsterdam, and they're looking at the differences between male and female brains. And male and female brains are actually very different. Female brains have more connective tissue in between them. And what they're discovering is that trans women, so that's somebody born biologically male who trans into female. So a transgender woman is someone who becomes a woman. That this transgender woman actually has a female brain. So a transgender woman, the only thing that has been told to be male is the penis. The penis and the testes, and so you get testosterone, so you get the Adam's apple and the hair and the muscles and whatnot. But the rest of the body has actually been told to be female. And most importantly, the brain, and that's where we think and where we get our feelings and our understanding and our processes and everything like that from. So I look at the people who are saying God created Adam and Eve. God created Steve too. And I firmly believe that God never makes a mistake when he creates a child. That child was meant to be on this earth for a reason. Might not have quite got the body right, but that's okay. We've got things now that we can improve that. We haven't got everything perfect. So I wanted to say Happy Transgender Day. I wanted to give a bit of education. And there are going to be this sector of the community, and it happens all the time. You know, we've actually just had a law passed about gay marriage. Now that upset me greatly. How dare the government ask me whether somebody over in Western Australia is allowed to get married? Upset me greatly. But as soon as I got my piece of paper in the mail, I signed it, voted yes, and put it back in the mail. Because you know what? We're on this earth for a really short period of time. And the aim of the game is to be happy. And so if we, by our societal misconceptions and our lack of education into what gender is, what sex is, what gender is, what sexual orientation is, what sexual expression is. If we stay blinkered about that and we don't learn about it, then how on earth are people expected to be happy? So I hope I've educated you a little bit. And we need to celebrate our diversity. Because without diversity, we don't progress. We don't think outside of the box. I watched a magician, and oddly enough, I'm bringing up the idea of a magician in a conversation about transgender. The magician is called Collins Key, and he's just brilliant. I was absolutely floored, but I watched a video of his, and he talks about the 3 key elements to being able to do a magic trick over and over and over. And he talks about misconceptions, assumptions, and expectations. And he said you can actually apply it to everything in life. And that if you're presented with a dilemma or a quandary or a problem or something that you need to make sense of, he says usually the answer is in plain sight. And so with misconceptions, we have misconceived the idea of gender. We've gone penis, boy, vagina, girl. That's actually about 90% true, but for 10% of people, that's not true. We've made assumptions. We've made assumptions that if somebody isn't penis boy, then they're wrong. We have to fix them somehow. We used to, up until the 80s, being a homosexual here in Australia, and particularly in one of our states, was illegal. You would have to go through corrective therapy for it. Chemical castration, they would often term it. That's horrendous. And that's only 35 years ago. That's not a long time. And so we've actually come such a long way. We've got a long way still to go. But people who are gay, and even openly gay, you know, their expression, they are safe enough now in our society to express themselves without feeling like they're going to get beaten to death or that they're going to be thrown in jail and chemically castrated. So our misconceptions about gender, our assumptions about gender, and our expectations of what things have to be like. You know, if our expectations about life don't change, then we don't have progress. And we don't have progress from an industry point of view, and we don't have progress in our social consciences. We'd still have slavery. Women still wouldn't get an education past 5th grade. Women wouldn't be allowed to vote. Men wouldn't be allowed to cry. Men wouldn't be present at the birth of their children. So we have to have fluid expectations. And we have to think a little bit outside the box. Because as Colin Key says, the solution is hiding in plain sight. And our solution is not to stop judging people, because we judge every day of our lives. The solution is not to be cruel. The solution is to be kind and learn and educate ourselves. So if you identify as transgender, or any one of the, the alphabet soup, LGBTIQ, and I think there's another 50 to go on top of that. If you identify as anything other than cisgender male or female, then I take my hat off to you. You're a really brave person. You have climbed a mountain. There's still a bit more of the mountain to go, because our society as a whole doesn't accept change. But we will. If you want any more information, there's a plethora of information out on the internet. But I really urge you to watch a video by a lady by the name of Ricky Arundel. I'll put the link in the description, and I'll put a tag, might be that side, I don't know. And I'll put a tag so you can just click it and watch it. She is a public speaker, and she talks really genuinely and really frankly. It's not way out this side, and it's not way out this side. It's really common horse sense. So I urge you to have a look. So happy Transgender Day. This is another video from the Nursing Hub. And if you're enjoying the videos, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.